This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
This episode is sponsored by Guidance Residential. Join Guidance Residential this November 9th for their consumer webinar, The Benefits of Islamic Home Financing, where you can find out best practices and tips on how to make the home buying experience smooth and easy for you and your community. Topics covered include the benefits of homeownership, understanding riba and today's lending practices, the differences between the Sharia way and the conventional way, how to prepare your finances and mistakes to avoid, what to expect during the home buying and searching process, and Q&A for the first-time home buyer. Share this event with your networks and register for limited seats at www.guidanceresidential.com. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Momming While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Jaffrey.
And this is Zeba Hassan. I have to say, I am so excited to see you healthy and all that good stuff. So, how are you feeling? How is everything going? I know you've been crazy.
I am good now and just I feel like I'm in nest mode because winter's coming, the season's changing. I'm in the mood for
Does winter
chilies.
come in Phoenix?
I mean, eventually.
I don't know.
We have a good 2 weeks of it. So,
okay.
We can finally wear sweaters. If that helps.
Okay.
We're finally wearing
the fall
sweaters.
fashions.
Yes. And the AC, I think, will officially be off in a month or so. We still have days when we need the air conditioning.
Okay.
But I'm excited because cooler weather here means we can have chili in the middle of the day. We don't have to wait until the nighttime.
I like
instead
that.
of an AC vent. So I like chili, whether it's vegetarian or has meat, soups, and of course hot cocoa with halal marshmallows, which have been really hard to get. I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if you have this problem. I have noticed.
There's a shortage. I've heard that there's a shortage.
Yes.
But you know what I do is I buy the Trader Joe's vegan ones.
Oh.
And I buy them in bulk because remember I have 2 vegetarians.
Yes,
so we are still popping them out. I have 2 more bags left.
But do you have the miniature ones or the big ones?
They're big. They don't come in the miniature.
Yeah. So the miniatures have been really hard to get. And so when I found them recently at the halal grocery store, I grabbed them up because the halal ones, they take a long time to melt in the hot cocoa. And then the kids throw them away. And I'm like, are you kidding? That's $7 worth of marshmallows. You can't throw that away.
So I have a tip for you.
Okay.
You can cut the big ones, Uzma.
Oh. That requires work. I did not think of that. Yes.
You can cut them. And they will melt. So let's not panic about the shortage of halal miniature marshmallows.
Marshmallows. Yeah. Okay. You're right. Absolutely. So I'm glad that you thwarted that crisis for me. So what's been going on your side?
I am, I'm still dealing with the changes of the seasons and the illnesses that come with them, having one of my kids be out of the house. Though he did text me and said he was going to come home early for Thanksgiving. So just looking forward to that, planning we're not big Thanksgiving celebrators, obviously, but it is an opportunity for all of us to be together and focused on each other. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But honestly, I've just been really excited about getting to know and read about all these things that we've been talking about this month. Because, we've explored polygamy and polygyny all through this November. And our guests have practiced and helped each other in polygamy. We've also had a lot of negative feedback as well. Though I do have to say, I don't think people are actually listening to the podcast. No. They're just looking at the title and getting triggered. So my suggestion to everybody that hasn't actually listened to the podcast, don't get triggered. Calm down, take a couple of deep breaths, listen. And if you still have that same opinion, I'm happy to talk about it with you. But our next guest has been a guest in the past and we absolutely love her. But she's here to provide a counter perspective. So we're going to welcome Ustada Saba Sayed. She has rocked our world multiple times about sex. Uzma's favorite topic, let's just be real. Her second favorite topic is this polygamy. We're going to talk about that on another day as well. She has a bachelor's degree in Islamic studies and has studied Arabic language and literature at the Qatar University and at Cairo Institute in Egypt. She has ijaza in Quranic recitation. For over 2 decades, she has empowered Muslim women via the correct and untainted teachings of Islam. She's one of our go-to people when we have questions as well. She has hosted several Islamic lectures and weekly halaqas in different communities all over the world. She hosts special workshops regarding parenting, Islamic sex education, female sexuality, and marital intimacy, which is what we're going to kind of get into a little bit today. We're welcoming Ustada Saba. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Momming While Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, guys. Thank you so much for having me over. It's always an honor and pleasure to be here. And really, I've been just watching and observing, mashaAllah, you guys grow and become so successful. Really happy for you guys and
MashaAllah,
really
MashaAllah.
Proud of you, what you're doing. Alhamdulillah, mashallah.
Thank you.
And, thank you, because you came on when a lot of people wouldn't.
Yes. They're like, who are you? Momming? What?
And still remain to this day, 4 years later, almost 200 episodes in now.
Yes.
You remain the top 5 most downloaded episodes for Islamic perspectives on sexual intimacy. So that just, if you want to find it, look up Saba Sayed on Momming While Muslim podcast and you will hear great things. And I have to say, I've known you for 25-ish years now.
MashaAllah.
And I still haven't completely forgiven you for not teaching me some of that stuff when I was 20, but that's okay. Now I know it
myself.
She's making up for lost times. Let's
I'm
just
totally
be
making
honest.
up for lost time. It's awesome. So for those who are listening to you for the first time, Ustada Saba, can you share with us your momming journey and your momming philosophy?
Momming journey is, well, it's not easy. It's really difficult. It's hard. Motherhood is, as much as it's a blessing, it's one of those blessings that comes wrapped with all kind of difficulties and all kind of hardships. And it never gets easier. I'm so sorry. I wish I had something good to tell you.
Thank you for being honest, because everybody else
Yes.
lies.
They're
Everybody
like,
else
oh,
is
it's going to
nice
get better.
to
I'm
you.
like, no, it just gets different and
You
worse in a
liars.
different way. No.
No, it's just, and don't get me wrong. I mean, subhanAllah, like at this point, I'm like the good thing. I started off with the bad thing, but the good thing I was going to say, it pays off. I mean, you reap the fruits, you invest in your kids. A day will come when you will be reaping the fruits. I love my kids. Alhamdulillah, I have the most amazing kids in the world. Their problems don't end, I'll be honest. But it is. I mean, they do, and then they get married and then they come back with their spouses, with them and their spouses.
And you're just like, oh my gosh.
This is why I got you married. Go away.
I have 2 kids married, alhamdulillah, with wonderful husband and wives, for both Reem and Abdullah. But, it's just, as a mother, you just never stop worrying for them. And even their smallest concern or issue in their life is something that just, touches your heart. So when people say, oh, to women, they're like, oh, accept the motherhood is a blessing. I was like, no, stop judging moms. It's not, it's wonderful. I don't know if you want to call it a blessing. It's a blessing to have kids, but the motherhood is not a blessing.
Yes.
It's a huge responsibility. Like, it's an amana. Like, you are answerable for the choices you make and don't make. Yeah.
And the more you love your kids, the more you're sincere in your love for your kids, the more the motherhood is going to weigh heavy on your heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
because there are
100%.
many moms who I have seen them, they just don't care. And they're just like, oh,
They're just like, it's all
their
good.
headache.
Have
Let
fun.
them deal with it. And I'm like, what do you mean let them deal with it? You're the mom, So yeah.
That was going to be my plan, but okay. I have just been told that I have to care. No, I will. Inshallah, I do.
And you do.
So this makes me really happy to hear, because there were, during our time at university, there were 4 MSA babies. 2 of them were yours. And now to see them as adults and married And I only saw the first two of yours and barely the second one. But I can vouch that both of them, I mean, Reem has helped Momming While Muslim raise thousands of dollars for children with cancer. Alhamdulillah, she is amazing and stands alone in her own right. Even though, like, initially I was like, oh, she's the shadow of her mother. No, she is a completely independent person of her mother. And you have raised an excellent woman in her. And your son is an excellent man, struck gold with that wife of his, mashaAllah. And I'm just like super, super impressed with both of them. And they are a testament to your mothering. So good job staying up at night worrying about them and their bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger problems as they grow older. But inshallah, may the path be easy for them and for you. Allahumma ameen. So since everybody's just waiting with bated breath on this, can we kick off the podcast talking a little bit about the fiqh of polygyny
Yes.
In Islam? We've already talked about the difference between polygamy and polygyny on the first episode of this series. But if you could talk a little bit about the fiqh, not what people understand or what people practice, but how it was written for us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I mean, how it's written for us, it's pretty clear, right? It is allowed. It's in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it permissible. Why he made it permissible, we don't know that. This is something, that none of the text in the Quran or in the Sunnah specifically says this is the XYZ reason why the polygamy was allowed. We can come up with our own guesses, but we would never know the real reason. Mm-hmm. And when you say fiqh, so fiqh can go in all directions. We can spend a whole podcast just discussing the fiqh. In a nutshell, what I can say is polygamy probably, takes the same ruling as the marriage. It's permissible there. It's not obligatory. And one of the ways that, one of my most, may Allah have mercy on him, favorite teacher explained, the teacher who refined our manners, Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif, I remember him once saying in the class that the opinion that appealed to him the most was just like a regular marriage could be obligatory, it could be encouraged, it could just be there, it could be makruh, disliked, or it could even become haram at points. In general, marriage is allowed, it's there, in some cases it can become haram, if you don't, like, if you have issues, if you have problems, if you can't handle, you cannot give your spouse the rights and you're aware of it, then don't get another person involved, because it is a commitment, it is a contract, you have to live by it. And so the similar ruling goes with polygamy also. And in the same clause, he said he would never do it because he cannot fathom that he would ever put his spouse through so much emotional pain. So he acknowledged the existence of emotional pain heavily involved in polygamy. So I guess, I don't know.
So
go ahead.
Sorry, she's opening it up. Thank you for that explanation for somebody like myself. But, we've now interviewed a couple different people that are in polygynous relationships. And the pros that they're saying why they support it is that it's the right of the husband, right? Like they're talking about it, it's the right of the husband. And that's kind of what they're using in support of the polygynous relationship in general. But, my understanding, I'm not an ustada like yourself, but my understanding is, it is permissible, right? It is in the Quran, but it's also not encouraged in the sense that he's been given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been given us multiple reasons as to how it would be difficult, right? And one of it is to the concept of being treated fairly. And you're saying and admitting that if you are a first wife, welcoming in a second wife, first of all, I don't know how that would happen personally. How can that happen if you're saying that it's such a huge emotional toll? even if you ultimately agree, are you agreeing because you're afraid? Like, I just have a hard time wrapping my brain around it. And I appreciate the answers that we've gotten from their perspectives, but I'm still not at a stage where I can fully understand the depth of that.
Thank you so much, Zeba, for asking and being so open about it. Honestly, one of the problems that I have observed and experienced in this long journey of, being in Ustaza and being honestly in the West, the first few ones in the beginning, back 20 years or 25 years ago, the way things are worded can make a huge difference, where humans like, how the news is brainwashed, like whether it was a retaliation or whether it was an attack, they make a huge difference.
Yes.
When they say that
Exactly.
this is the right of the husband, I have a problem. This becomes problematic because when you are in a marital relationship, which from the Shari'i, from the fiqhi perspective, it is a contract, right? So in the contract, there are rights. Being fed is a right of a wife. That's a right. You cannot take that away. Being respected is a right of a husband. You can't remove that right from him. That's a right. And is having a second wife his right, or is it something just permissible and it's there? If he wants to practice it, he can. Does he have when you say that something becomes a right, I cannot put in my marriage contract that you don't have to, I don't know, like I don't have to respect my husband. I mean, you can't remove that. It is a fundamental right. That's a right. Mm-hmm. But we know about polygamy. A wife can put it in the marriage contract that her husband is not going to take a second wife. If it was a right, you wouldn't be able to remove that from him. But it is allowed for the wife to put that in the contract. So when they come and they say, oh, it is his right, it changes the whole perspective versus it's something permissible. It's there. Just like, a sheikh who's, I respect him a lot. And, Sheikh Asr Bajaz, he once explained it to me that it's like, cauliflower. And I think I was talking to Uzma about it. It's like eating cauliflower, it's allowed. It's permissible. Is it going to suit everybody? No, it doesn't suit everybody. Sometimes it creates, gives you health issues and stomach issues, which may create problems for yourself first and foremost, and the people around you also. So it's like
in multiple ways.
Exactly. It doesn't suit everybody and it's permissible. It's there. Do you have to do it? Especially if it's creating problems? No. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I will now not look at cauliflower the same way. So I really appreciate that. Obviously, if you're in a country that allows it, it's different, right? Because then the rights of both of the co-wives, is what they want to be called, are respected. But here in the States, it's not legal in any capacity. So in my opinion, to your point, that second wife and her family is like just basic. Yeah, you can put it in contracts and wills and things like that, but just the basic thing of like health insurance and being able to be recognized as a legitimate family. I just kind of am like, how do you get around that? If you really want to be treated fairly, maybe if you're in another country where that is, supported, it could be a different experience. But here in the States where it is not legal, and Islamically it's legal, right? But from a legal nationalistic perspective, it's not. So how can we help serve those second, third, potentially fourth families that don't necessarily have the rights in the eyes of the law here in the States?
Right. I mean, there's no solution. No one has come up with any solution. So,
okay. So I didn't know if there was a solution brewing or what, because it definitely was not, because I was just very curious about that. I'm like, so what do you do? Do you have to get private insurance? Like the basic logistics of how you would run and work your family, I think would be difficult for me to understand.
Yes. And it would be. And then, if you go like, what can you do? Because let's say they cannot afford a private insurance and they have to go through Obamacare or, the other government supported health insurances, then again, they're going to first put the burden of it on the father. And then so it starts adding up. And is that, I don't know, is something that we need to ask, is that fair? Is that fair to expose families to that, to women and children? Is it fair to put them in that position?
No, that's exactly right. So we've been talking about it, and I have to say, I've been reading about it just to prep for these interviews. And my question to you as an Estada, do you feel, and maybe it isn't, maybe it's just me just throwing it out there, do you feel that the polygyny issue actually opens the door for the spiritual abuse of women within the ummah? Because a lot of them are being told that it's the right of the man, and they're kind of having to go along with it in order to fully practice their religion or whatever the case may be. And we're hearing that just because something is permissible doesn't mean that you should do it. But it is being used for a lot of women as an excuse or a reason to support polygynous relationships. So what are your thoughts on that as somebody who has read and is very well learned about this particular topic?
It's a very good question, Zeba. To be honest, you basically brought the magic word out, the spiritual abuse. And in all honesty, I would say that yes, this is one area, one aspect where unfortunately our Muslim community has tainted the beauty of Islam with the spiritual abuse, because you can see in the just near past, a lot of situations came up where the imams or the religious scholars were called out and they were involved in spiritual abuse, and that was all associated to multiple marriages. They had their wives, they were either in secret or in open. It was all about multiple marriages. Then if we kind of dig into this issue, we would see that the way, I don't know, in my experience, in my lifetime, I have not met a woman who would happily accept to be in a plural marriage, at least not from my ethnicity, at least not, from the people that I have met and who have been in polygamous relationship. The reason women would stay or would even give it a chance or try it is because they're told, as you said, it's your husband's Islamic right. So when you word it like that, right, Islamic right. I mean, to be honest, I got married. I was pretty young. I was only 19. I was introduced, started becoming religious when I was around 17, 18. So I was still pretty new to it. But this was also all the, shuyukh's most favorite topic to discuss and bring it up as the husband's Islamic right. So when you start hearing that and you're trying to be religious and you're trying to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then obviously you find yourself in a very a vulnerable position, and is in a place where you're like, oh my God, I have to accept this if I want to be a good Muslimah. And that's what you're being told. If you, and from personal experience, if you go to a sheikh and the answer you get is, oh sister, this is your husband's Islamic right, and if you're going to stop him from doing that, he might fall into something haram, as if, so it's not only that, oh, I have
that
to
he can't control himself.
He can't control himself.
But you're going to be the one pushing him into that.
There's an easy pass, they get the pass because men are going to be men. And then because they make the choice of doing something wrong, it will fall on you because somehow you didn't accept polygamy. And then what do you do? As a person who is trying to be religious, who is trying to be spiritual, who's trying to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would look at polygamy not as a way to get close to Allah. But is it really that? Is it really serving that purpose, or are men simply using all these excuses to get what they want?
Yes, that's what I want to know. But I'm coming at this, and I've been coming at this from the perspective of trying to understand, like, why would somebody make a choice like this? But, my innate instincts is that, especially because you're saying yourself, and you brought it up, and I'm just segueing this question. A lot of these sheikhs that have talked, they're having multiple marriages, but a lot of them are in secret, which in and of itself is putting that second, third wife at a disadvantage. First of all, can you speak to that? Why the secrecy? If it's allowed and permissible, why the secrecy? And two, in being in secret, you're putting that spouse that you're supposed to love, care for, and all of those good things in a very precarious situation by not being openly recognized by the community.
Ziba, I've had the same questions, and to be honest, I don't know if I have an answer for you, but this is my observation. This is not, Islam is subhanAllah, is a very fair religion, and it's very, it appeals to our fitra, it appeals to our innate nature. And, it is supposed to bring you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The actions that are permissible, they're supposed to create, like, they're supposed to bring out benefits and goodness and success, not create a chaos, not start breaking the families, not start breaking the communities, or creating issues because of certain thing that is being practiced in the name of being somebody's right. This has been my question too, what you asked, because now here's the thing is, okay, polygamy, it's allowed. It's now somebody wants to practice it. So you go to a sheikh and you ask, and most of the time the women are told, oh, sister, this is his right. Don't break the family, try to be a good supportive wife so you can go to Jannah, so you can keep your family together. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with that answer. But at the same time, divorce is permissible. There are no conditions attached to divorce. It's not like that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed divorce and in the same ayah, he discouraged it from happening. No, he didn't. Mm-hmm. In fact, in Surah Talaq, it's perhaps one of those surahs that actually discusses the difficulties of divorce, and then it goes into Allah's support and this turn to Allah and he will open the exit for you from places you have not even thought of. So it's such a encouraging surah, But on the other hand, we have seen polygamy as something Allah said, okay, it's allowed, but you will not be able to practice it. So stay with your one wife in the same ayah. So
literally.
So when here's my question too, is so when somebody goes asking for divorce, then there's a whole discouragement. There's a whole lecture. No, sister, please don't do this. Keep your family together. Think about your children. Think about, the difficulties that are going to come with this. Try to reconcile be patient. Try to reconcile your issues with your husband, all these things, all the pressure of walking away from something which is permissible and trying to keep the family together and happy, it gets put on a woman. When a man wants to take a second wife, why isn't the same advice given to him? Why isn't the same, nasiha or suggestion is given to him that, no, brother, if you have a good wife and you're happy, and yes, you will never have a perfect wife, but if she's good, she's mostly good to you, she's mostly good to the kids, try to keep your family together. Don't involve into something which is going to break the family apart, which is going to put so much emotional trauma on your spouse and on your children. If the same advice is offered to the brothers also, I truly believe there would be a balance. I truly believe that this will not be looked upon as a spiritual abuse then. Because on one hand, divorce, which is permissible, is discouraged in the name of don't break the family. We have seen over and over and over again that polygamy has broken families, you know, in pretty much every country. Even because I lived in the Middle East, and I know how polygamy is looked down upon over there. Coming from Indian, Pakistani background, even over there, you know, the parents keep telling the daughter, like, stay, you know, be patient. But the minute a husband takes a second wife, parents go like, come back right now. So even in that culture where it's just so much,
he can beat the crap out of you, but if he takes a second wife, you come back home.
Even if he's beating her, it's like stay. But the minute he brings a second wife, so
stay, don't break up the family. But he took a second wife. Oh no!
Even in such a misogynist culture, you know, polygamy is not appreciated. So obviously there are harms. Obviously there is a perspective of it that is being tried so hard to separate it from it and just accept it as it's his right and it's permissible. Yes, it is, but there are harms. And when there are harms, then you really have to see whether it's worth it or it's not worth it. And in just recent time, a sheikh, you know, finally, when I had like this discussion going on with him, he finally said it. I wish I could say his name. I'll ask him for next time whether I could quote his name or not. But he said, if a second marriage breaks the first marriage, then by definition, it becomes impermissible.
Oh, that's a big deal.
From a fiqh perspective, what makes the shaitan most happy is to break a marriage. And so if it is breaking a marriage, then they really have to take a step back and evaluate and see, you know, are we being fair? Are we being just? Or are we just putting all the pressure and all the burden on just one gender because, you know, the other gender has too many privileges?
I'm going to go with that. Yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what we've historically been doing. I want to roll off of the honesty conversation and the secret stuff conversation. There's, you know, a lot of times context is withheld. And I've gotten emotional in the past on the podcast when I finally learned context of certain things that were just never shared with us, because it's always so useful to a particular gender, hiding context from the other gender, which is typically women, in order to keep us in the dark about our religion and just all the most beautiful parts about it, the most just parts about it. So can you share the Hadith of Fatima that you recently talked about? Because all of us have heard this Hadith, but we haven't heard the context. And I think that given our conversation today, the context is really important. And then maybe tell us how and who it serves by hiding that context, what that's done to Muslim societies across the world.
The hadith, Uzma, you're referring to is, I believe, is Fatima radiallahu anha, when Ali radiallahu anha, her husband, decided he wanted to take a second wife, and she got hurt, a very natural reaction, and she went to her father to complain about it. And subhanAllah, I'm going to start crying because it just shows that how beautiful our faith is and how fair our faith is. But when it's not practiced fairly the way it's supposed to be, then look what happens. The whole need of trying to fight for women's right and joining, like, you know, one-sided mainstream feministic ideas, obviously they're going to take place and they're going to prosper, because when you're being unfair, then what do you expect? And her father, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his, in his merciful nature and in his fairness, he comforted his daughter. He comforted his daughter, and he made a general statement, and he said, "Whoever hurts Fatima hurts me." And subhanAllah, in just like such a short statement, he basically told Ali what to do. he, first of all, he acknowledged her emotional pain. This woman, radiallahu anha, she's not some ordinary woman. She is the leader of all the women in Jannah. We are supposed to look up to her. So you want to talk about the Islam? You want to talk about Medina Islam? That's my role model right there. She got hurt by an act, which is supposedly the right of her husband, right? And she went complaining to her father. And her father acknowledged her emotional pain. He didn't say, oh, fear Allah, Fatima. Try to be a good Muslimah, Fatima. Try to give your husband his rights so you can find your place in Jannah. He didn't say none of that. What he said is whoever hurts Fatima hurts me. So he acknowledges her pain. He acknowledges the fact that this action of Ali is going to hurt Fatima radiallahu anha. And he doesn't want his daughter to get hurt. So he associates her pain to his pain. And he knows that would have stopped Ali radiallahu anhu from ever hurting the Prophet. And he says, he didn't tell Ali. He's like, Ali, don't do it. Ali, do it secretly. Or, just don't tell your wife. That like most of the shuyukh, I can tell you from a first-hand experience, is that's what they would say, is that just don't tell your wife. Just do it and don't tell your wife. But he said, whoever hurts Fatima hurts me. And that stopped Ali radiallahu anha. And he never took a second wife for as long as Fatima radiallahu anha was alive. And so there's so many answers that if you dissect this hadith, you will find, if you study it in details and you start branching it out, you will see that, everything that a Muslim woman goes through has been acknowledged, has been recognized, has been endorsed, and without the judgment of her faith. You guys have no idea how much, like, the Muslim woman, and, from like I had heard, that if you're not, if you have a problem with this, that resembles the weakness of your faith or the weakness of your iman. Mm-hmm. And to go through that when you're trying to be spiritual, when you're trying to be a good Muslim and you're struggling, because there are so many fitnas and evils in this world, and you are trying to refine your actions and everything. And on top of that, your emotional, your emotions are not validated. You're stripped off from your natural pain. You're being gaslighted. Yeah. Your faith is being judged because something is hard for you to accept. You're being told that, oh, your faith is weak, or you're not a good Muslimah. All of that, as you said, Zeba, is it a part of spiritual abuse? I would say so. I think so. And before all this social media, subhanAllah, I've lived through the time where we didn't have the internet. That's when I started becoming religious. We didn't have the internet. Then we got the internet. It used to be so slow. And that, without all this,
I still hear the thing, the dial tone.
Yes.
And to your point, it's not the sound bites, right? You actually had to go, if you needed the answers, you had to go to the resources. You had to do, versus, oh, here's a quick meme that came up, and oh, that makes sense, and it fits what I want, so it must be true. That type
exactly.
Of,
and I mean, the social media has facilitated support groups. I mean, look at this. Look what Momming While Muslim is doing. You guys are providing support groups for so many women out there, right? Even without this podcast, like, we didn't hear these other opinions. It was years and years and years later. I think when I already had 3 kids, the first time I read Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen's fatwa, that he's one of the very respected shuyukhs, from like the Super Salafi days. He was the first one that I ever read acknowledge that if a woman is hurting from the second marriage, that her husband wants to get a second wife, and she does not want to stay in that marriage, does not make her faith weak. It does not make her any less religious than a woman who would accept polygamy. And I remember reading that fatwa over and over again. I was like, what? And I went back and I read the sheikh's name. I was like, is it really? It was on Islam Q&A. I was mind blown. So can you see how many years it took? It was just like in recent time when the social media started becoming more active, then I read it. I was like, oh, wow. So yeah, it was just one-sided version of Islam. And then it was just that whole drilling that no, your faith will go to a trial if you, God forbid, say that, you know, you're not okay with a polygamous marriage.
We started this series because we, you know, I'm going to speak for myself, was coming from a place of judgment. And I wanted to provide, because it is one of those things where if somebody doesn't know much about Islam, they'll know that Muslim men can marry multiple wives, right? Like that's one of the, and we don't eat pork, right? Like those are the two things that they'll tell you. So being able to share different perspectives is something that I feel we're trying to be balanced about. But you know, my understanding about a lot of these things based on my own readings was that it would just make it extremely, extremely difficult. So I definitely appreciate you putting this into perspective. But what can we do, since we are a momming podcast, right? Like, and we're moms of boys, moms of girls, moms of what kind of advice would you give a son or a daughter about polygyny or polygamy if it came up? I have to say it doesn't come up in my household just because it's not modeled for them. But what would you suggest for kids? Because at the end of the day, it really does impact the children as well, because they have zero choice of any of this, right? They're kind of either married into, or they kind of are born into it, or they come into it a little bit later. And maybe the adults are consenting, but the children are not consenting. So what would you suggest if one of our children came up to us and started asked us about this? What would you suggest we say to them as mothers?
To be honest, Zeba, it's like it's the same thing as if, I don't know, if our child come to us and say, you know, slavery is also allowed in Islam, so can I keep a slave? What are you going to say to them? It's, you know, you're going to say, well, it's so impractical, and look at the reasons why the slavery was allowed. And then, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had actually put so much reward, like it was allowed, but it's something that we could see from the pattern that it was sort of Muslims were being,
it was trying to be phased out.
Yes, they were being weaned off slowly. And if you take the polygamy also, you could say, you know, yes, it's allowed, but look, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already told you, you're not going to be able to be fair. And then
it was also being weaned off because it was part of a culture that there was even more than 4 wives, right? Like from a historical perspective.
Yeah, they had no limit on wives. So actually for Islam to put a limit on the number of wives
was a big thing.
Was a big thing, from having like multiple wives to only having 4 was a big drop for them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discouraging it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, just stick to one, you know, because obviously he's the one who created us and he knew what was most beneficial for them. So then to talk to your sons about, look, this is, you are actually going to create problems for yourself. You are going to lose your mental peace. You are going to put yourself in a position where on the day of judgment, if you were unfair, and that's also, by the way, in a hadith that you can check, you know, Uzma later, is that if a man is going to come paralyzed on one side on the day of judgment, if he was not fair with both of his wives. So you really want to be a sincere, a good mother to your son, then discourage him from doing something which is only going to create problems for him and going to take away that peace from him that, you know, he could have with just having one family and focusing on that family and having someone, you know, to grow old with and, you know, have his back in his old age and everything, rather than exposing himself, you know, like one of the sheikhs that I know said, you know, he said something which was so funny to the brothers. He was just like, you know, at least have one wife and make sure that she loves you instead of having 2 wives and guaranteeing that neither one of them love you.
Exactly.
So, you know, yeah, invest into creating a family. There's one thing I'm gonna not really sidetrack, but because you asked me this question, if you know your son comes to you, a pattern that I have noticed over and over again, and even if you look online or you talk to anybody, it's the polygamy is always associated to men's sexual fitna. That, you know, men have more desires, men have more needs, and, you know, if they're not going to do this, they're going to fall into something haram and, you know, all sorts of things, which I would like to challenge, which I would like to say that, give me a proof where in Islam does it say that because of men's sexual fitna, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed men to have 4 wives. We will not find any of that text that would say this. Even the hadiths that men bring that, the biggest fitna that I am leaving for you behind is a woman, has a whole explanation. The Prophet never said sexual fitna. Fitna is a test and a trial. Allah called our own children fitna in the Quran for us. That does not make children evil or anything. It just means that they are a test. If we succeed in this test, we will find our place in Jannah. And if we fail in this test, we will be held accountable on the day of judgment. So fitna, for calling women a fitna, was because, the Prophet ﷺ also said in his last khutbah that, take care of women, be mindful how you treat your woman. And we can see that, most Muslim societies becoming misogynist might have been, the concern that he was pointing out to is that Muslim men will not be treating Muslim women fairly and justly in the way they are supposed to be treated. And that's why he said that's the biggest fitna I'm leaving for you behind, is that because they will be your trial. You will not be treating them well, and hence you will be creating problems for the rest of the ummah. And the other examples that we do know from the Prophet ﷺ is when they brought a young man to the Prophet ﷺ who wanted to commit adultery. The Prophet ﷺ did not tell him, go get married. The Prophet ﷺ sat down with him and he reasoned with him. SubhanAllah, like what the sex addict therapists do now is that, would you like it if it was done on your sister or on your mother or on your daughter? And he was like, no. So he's like, whoever you're going to commit zina with would be somebody's sister or daughter or mother. He didn't say, oh yeah, that's a sexual fitna, men are created like this, they're sexual monsters or whatever, so yeah, just let him get married 1 time or 2 time or 3 time or 4 time. No, he didn't say any of this. He reasoned with him. He acknowledged that the young boy has a problem and he needs to work on that. He never offered marriage as a solution. And in another incident where the young man wanted to get married and he couldn't get married, and, he was having obviously he was a young man with hormones and everything. The Prophet ﷺ told him to fast. He didn't tell him, okay, get married 1 time and 2 time and 3 time and 4 time. He never offered polygamy as a solution to the men of that time who were having sexual fitnas. He gave them a solution of fasting or reasoning with them. Reasoning was basically a therapy. He was being a therapist to him. So do you see the difference? Do you see what the textual evidence says? And these things are suppressed. These things are never, they're misrepresented. If we start focusing on these things, and yes, there is sexual fitna is not only among men, it's among women also. I am a pastoral counselor. I do see that pornography and the availability of the hypersexual society has created so many issues. We need to work on that and tackle that problem from its roots and come up with the right solutions rather than keep saying that, men need to have multiple wives, and because polygamy cannot be practiced, that's why men are having sexual fitnas. I don't think so. I don't think that's true. I think that's a huge misrepresentation. I think that creates the opportunity to have spiritual abuse. And I think that in all this, poor men and our young boys get ignored and never get to the correct solution to the problem. So yeah, sorry if I overspoke.
I think all of that is really important. I was saying earlier that the reason why I get emotional hearing the context of these hadith and these other issues that you brought up, he said to fast, the sunnah is to fast. The sunnah is anybody who hurts Fatima hurts me. But we don't get the context because it serves those people who were educated in Islam, who were historically men, and it served them to hide it from us, from our mothers and our grandmothers. And that's why this cultural fear of polygyny got built up and built up and built up, because the practice was corrupted and corrupted and corrupted with time because of things like the context not being taught father to son, mother to daughter, father to daughter, because that's sincere love. I think even between members of a family unit has been so corrupted. And I'm not going to blame like social media or anything. I think it's people advancing their own agendas at the expense of others, which, if I'm correct, in Islam, we call that oppression. And if I'm also correct, that is haram. So it really touches me a lot to hear the context, because I feel like so many generations have lost out on the beauty and justice of Islam that you're discussing today. Sure. For those of us who are, here to hear both sides of the story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing, is this is not a gender war. This is not a men versus woman thing. Honestly, I'm not an anti-men or anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created both genders, and both genders have, they're good and evil in every person, in every man and woman. It's just that what they nurture within themselves. Men are not evil. Men are not trash. I even tell my kids, I make sure that my daughters hear this from me, that I do not support the notion men are trash. They're not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created men. All our prophets were men. There are amazing men out there. This is not a gender war. This is not, I do not support the mainstream, extreme, the feministic ideas.
Western white feminism
exactly.
Is not for
I do not support that. Mm-hmm. And I wish that our Muslim sisters did not have to fall on those ideas to at least get heard, or, get some of their rights that are there given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just that, there has been a huge imbalance of rights. And let's pay attention to the warning of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in his last khutbah, he repeated over and over again to men, please be mindful of how you treat your woman. And we see, I wish there was no need for Muslim women to stand up and fight for their rights. But unfortunately, we are in this situation, and it's a generational brainwashing, and it's a generational conditioning. Even the shuyukh, I wouldn't blame them 100%, even though I would hold them accountable for their knowledge and for the position that they're in. They're also coming from those, cultural conditioning of generations and generations. But I do believe that there is a very unfair explanation, the biases, and there is a lack of validation of what is natural for a woman to go through when something like this is brought up.
Right.
Yeah.
And, we make the dua here on the podcast, Ya Allah, protect us from oppression and protect us from becoming oppressors.
Yes.
And how cool would it be if every Muslim made that dua?
Mm-hmm.
Because then we would be, it would not be, I guess it would be supporting the rights of our brothers and sisters too.
Yes.
So if you did that, there would be no question of whose rights are being oppressed or not, or whose rights are more important or not. They're all important.
They're all important.
But the most important thing is not to take away somebody's right, and the right to feel what you're feeling is right. That was created by Allah. So that's not wrong.
Yes.
Period.
Exactly.
Your feelings aren't wrong. And, if we could just get some kind of validation and more male allies, I think that would advance our cause. And you're right. The shuyukh have a huge responsibility.
They do.
And we hope they step up to it. In addition to all the things, the good work that they do, this is a very critical aspect, because half of the world's population, or the human population, they would be able to support by literally, they would have to send out one tweet, right, at this point, and they could make a huge, million, billion person effect if they did that. So,
yes. And I do support these podcasts.
They'll yield their power.
I do support these podcasts. I appreciate raising your voice on this, because look, sometimes you have to really fight, for your rights, and that's not disallowed in Islam. So look how huge impact #MeToo had on the whole world, including the Muslim Ummah, where, a lot of these spiritual abuse issues came out after that incident, because simply when there's no accountability, then a lot of wrongs start taking place. So if we start, just staying quiet in the name of like being patient, that's not patience. As Sheikh Tamara said once, the patience is not just tolerating it. The patience is raising your voice and going through the difficulties that would come through and tolerating that. That's patience. So
yeah,
I mean, we have over and over and over again seen the damage of the polygamy that's being practiced in our times, and the way it's being practiced has created. I was just recently reading somebody that, I admire how he's raising his kids and everything, but he basically commented that he has seen a lot of successful polygamous marriages, and and my objection to that, whenever a man says this, that I have seen a lot of successful polygamous marriages, is that men usually don't go around complaining about how they cannot like keep a control over their emotions or family issues or whatever. They would not say it. You really have to ask the wives and the children whether they would call this plural marriage a successful marriage or not. That's where the right judgment is going to come from.
Yeah. And that's why we're so glad that we only invited all the moms in the polygynous relationships onto the podcast this month. Because it was like, well, if you're saying it, then it might be right. But if it's him, I don't trust him so much, because I've really heard him my entire life. But I would really like to hear from the women and the children. You're absolutely right. And so that's why we are really blessed and really, really humbled by the fact that this podcast is here and people feel safe enough to come on and share their truths in their lives, and that you did too.
And you're the first platform that I have ever spoken to on this. So yes.
On this subject. Yeah. So I know it might gain some traction, and it might gain some more trolls, and we so look forward to it. We're excited about all of you. Please come, one and all, and we will keep you safe and protected. So was there anything else that you wanted to close with or hadn't gotten a chance to talk about that you want to talk about before we jump into our rapid fire?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So our rapid fire, I don't think you got to participate in this the last time you were here, but we started the segment at the end. Yeah, we weren't doing it then. So we're going to ask you some questions in 90 seconds. So first answer off the top of your head is always the right answer. There's no pass fail. It's all pass. Okay. So no correct answer. I'm going to put 90 seconds on the clock. And we do this just to kind of get to know you a little bit better. And I know that there's things that I want everybody to hear about the other parts of your life that have nothing to do with polygamy or, being an ustada. And I want people to hear about it. So the first question is always, what book are you reading right now?
Profit First.
Profit First? Okay. I will have to look that up and add it to the show notes. The second question I have is, what's something new happening in your life right now?
You know what's happening.
Exciting.
I just started.
I think you should tell everybody.
I just started a spa. It's a Moroccan bath. It's not really a spa. It's not a traditional spa. It's a hammam, a Moroccan bath. I guess pretty much we are we are the only facility in Houston right now. So yes, it's exciting, kind of nervous, scary, stressful, definitely. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I can't wait to come and visit, because I'm going to pause the clock just because I want to talk about it. But I remember a Moroccan friend of mine was like, oh my God, there's no hammams here. Like, how do people stay clean without a hammam? Like back home, if you don't go to the hammam once a week, you're dirty. I was like, I want to know what this is. What is this? And, it is definitely an experience. It's not like any kind of spa experience you've ever had. So why don't you tell everybody what the name of the spa is so they can look it up and book it for their trips to Houston?
Sure. Thank you, Uzma. I really appreciate you doing this. It's Oasis Moroccan Bath. So it's OASIS MoroccanBath.com. That's our website. And yeah, it is like a full body facial. You get, we have every room is a steam room. You get the treatment on a marble table. It's very private. And we have both male and female therapists. So then you get on the marble table, a therapist take care of you completely from head to toe. There's also a hair treatment. There's even a face treatment. All our products for face and hair are from France, the European products. And for the hammam, they're all from Morocco. And it's the idea is not just the hammam, but I wanted to actually become a brand of hospitality. So we have the experience starts from the minute you walk into the spa. We take care of you like you're royalty for that time while you're in Oasis. So you just have to come and try
Inshallah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
For anybody who is, having a tough time, especially this month during our series or related to our series, you probably need a Turkish hammam in your life. So go to Oasis Moroccan Bath in Houston.
It's Moroccan
hammam in Houston. So it's not a bath and it's not a spa. You really can't even call that. Hammam is completely different.
It's very different.
Yes. I forget what is the root. What is the root word for hammam anyway in Arabic?
Bath, hammam, it's the hammam, like when
bath?
You're taking a shower.
Bath. Okay.
Yeah, it's taking a shower. But there's no bathtubs or anything. It's all the treatment is done on a marble table.
Mm-mm.
And
on a marble slab, guys. This is amazing.
And each room has steamers and everything. So each room turns into a sauna room. So your muscles are relaxed, your pores are open, and then you use all the products, exfoliate. Put mask, close all your pores, take care of you. There is something with hammam that I'm going to say, it's just not your body being clean, but it's like you feel like you're being taken care of.
Yeah. It is definitely because from what I understand, overseas hammams get really intimate with you. So they're really taking care of everything. And
you get this
making
feeling,
sure that you are clean from the inside
you feel
out.
like a baby, someone is giving you a bath and you just feel like you're being taken care of. And it's funny because we had prepared our therapists that, look, women are often neglected. They're not taken care of. So this is what I trained my therapist. I was just like, you guys are here to take care of these clients, And we have had incidents where the woman just broke down and they just started crying and they shared what they were going through. Yeah. And that for me is success. Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait to come and cry at your hammam. So I'm going to turn the clock back on so we can finish the rapid fire and everybody's going to go. We'll have the link to the hammam in our show notes for anybody who wants to book a visit. My next question is, what's something that you do not like doing? Cooking. A woman after my own heart. I love it. And what is your favorite hobby when and if you ever have downtime between opening a new business? And
I love watching good movies or good TV shows. I'm a big,
Okay.
That's me time.
Is there a particular genre?
Has to be with good acting and good storyline. It could be any genre, but has to be good.
Oh, okay. So genre doesn't matter. Okay. I love it. I'm headed to probably one of my final Avengers movies this Friday.
Why final?
Because there's this whole controversy about the new Marvel super hero that's coming out. So we're all writing our petitions right now. And
no, I don't know.
Yeah, I can talk to you about it offline. Oh, yeah. We might have to boycott Marvel soon. The Muslim world will. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Don't do it, Marvel. You're going to lose us all. But yeah, that was it for our rapid fire. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that segment. I know I love hearing about the, Oasis.
Thank you.
Because I have so much FOMO about it. But inshallah, I'll be coming to Houston and seeing you soon.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for having me over.
Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. All right.
This episode is sponsored by Guidance Residential. Join Guidance Residential this November 9th for their consumer webinar, The Benefits of Islamic Home Financing, where you can find out best practices and tips on how to make the home buying experience smooth and easy for you and your community. Topics covered include the benefits of homeownership, understanding riba and today's lending practices, the differences between the Sharia way and the conventional way, how to prepare your finances and mistakes to avoid, what to expect during the home buying and searching process, and Q&A for the first-time home buyer. Share this event with your networks and register for limited seats at www.guidanceresidential.com.